Let us get the show on the road. I am going to take it home as best as I can. I'm going to talk about a culture of iconoclasts. I'm going to start with a really brief history of iconoclasm, and then I'm going to talk about the relevance. So I promised a really brief history. Let's take it back a little bit to Moses coming off the mountain. So he said, brought down the second commandment, thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images. Years later, Pope Leo III said, enough of all this paraphernalia and souvenir shop Christianity. We got to get rid of that. We got to look to worship the higher power and not these statues. Years later that, you get John Calvin. Years after that, you get this visionary. So this visionary takes it to the current day of, yes, baseball bat in hand, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. How not only you can have baseball bats in your hand, but you should hand them out to your teams, and how to create a culture where people get excited to go, yes, what could I do when I'm brandishing that bat to smash something apart that will help build a better future and create more product innovation? So innovation relies on iconoclasm, I would assert. Innovation relies on smashing idols, as I'd also assert. And so these are some fine titles on Netflix. I swear this is not a promotion. These things actually inspire people who are iconoclasts in different ways. And so it exists in all kinds of forms, whether it's a fictional little girl who falls in love with a giant animal that's all CG created, and she wants to save it, but those big, bad, genetically modified companies, they're going to come down and slaughter her animal, but she's going to protect it because she's an iconoclast and she's going to change the world, even though she's a 13-year-old Korean girl who has to go to America to do it. Okay, that's fictional. Some of these are factual. Doesn't matter. They're here to inspire us. So here's a guy. If we can find 10, 20% of the courage that Ai Weiwei shows, we'd be way ahead of the game because iconoclasm needs courage. And so Ai Weiwei, if you don't know, he's an artist, lives in China, and if you haven't read the news in the last 30 years, it's not the most open place for creativity. And believe me, I know firsthand because we tried to get Netflix into China. It didn't go so well, if you haven't heard. So, but this is a lot of courage when you do a whole series of photographs. And the series of photographs is called A Study on Perspective. Think about the double meaning there. I like it. And the study on perspective is he will flip the bird to not only the White House, but Tiananmen Square in his long series. He is confronting the powers that be, and he's creating art while he's doing it, and he's doing it in China, and he served time in prison in China, but he's become such a worldwide celebrity that even the Chinese are reluctant to lock him up too long because it makes them look bad for the Chinese brand. But like I said, courage, a big recipe, a big ingredient. So let's look at these guys. They're pretty famous when it comes to iconoclasts. So we talk a lot, this whole great conference that I'm proud to be at is about creating great product. Here's two giants among us from our past who you can say were iconoclasts, and they did that extra thing in product. So a lot of us, when we create product, what do? We listen to the consumer, we hear about their needs, we try to fulfill those needs in a way that will meet what needs to be done. But even a higher thing to do is sometimes if you could create needs for the consumer. And that could lead to something huge, and that's even riskier. And that's what Mr. Edison and Mr. Jobs did. So can you call them iconoclasts? Did they challenge the way things are? Absolutely. Were they geniuses? Sure. Hard to argue they weren't. But, they were a little self-promotional, I'd say, a little bit. Like the great actor in the day back in the 30s, Spencer Tracy, he played Thomas Alva Edison, among many actors who played Edison, portrayed in many movies. And Steve Jobs had his day, Michael Fassbender, also a great actor, also played Jobs in a fine way. And if you don't like his performance, try Ashton Kutcher. I don't know if that's my cup of tea, but everyone has different tastes. I've learned that at Netflix. So basically, self-promotional, yes. Probably bastards to work for? Yeah, probably. I know friends who worked in Cupertino, and it was great. You get a special meeting with Steve Jobs. I get to talk to Steve. Oh my God, I met Steve for 10 minutes back in 1999. It was amazing. And it's like, that's a cult of personality. You shouldn't want to desperately meet someone and be in their presence. He's not the goddamn Pope. And neither was Edison. So do I want to create a culture and product where I am a cult of personality and I'm such a frickin' genius that just seeing me and being in my presence for 20 minutes is special? Well, you better have the talent and genius of these two beloved and well-respected assholes if you're going to succeed at acting like that. You better have intellect up to that level, or else, you know what? Maybe create a better culture. Maybe foster, within your teams a lot of innovation as well. So, step one is something that I know you've done, and I know you've done, and you've done, and over there you did, and probably many people in this room, which is you've had your moments where you fought the powers that be. That's why you're successful product executives. And you challenged the orthodoxy, and you did something innovative, and that helped advance your career. So step one, I'm going to give you an example. My early days at Netflix, when Gib and I had the honor and privilege of working together, and when I got in, this is what we were at. These were the gods at Netflix. And Netflix, such a data-driven culture, but we were still genuflecting underneath the stars. And it wasn't these stars. Our religion was praying to these stars. Rating something on a 1 to 5 star scale was an obsession when I got there because we thought that was the magic. If we can get as many people to rate on a 1 to 5 star system, then you can know their personal taste, and bam, we're going to take it all the way to the bank because it's going to get huge because we'll know your taste and your taste and your taste, and that's going to be great. So I monomaniacally, that was the job I was given, shoved me in that direction. I was going to get as many ratings as possible. Billions of ratings later, I was like, you look in the mirror one day, you think in the shower, and you think, what the hell am I doing? Is this really helping the business? And then you come to a realization and you think to yourself, you know what? If you get their ratings, is that the best signal of their taste? Or is a better signal of their taste to watch their behavior? And it's an obvious answer, we know now. So yes, they might say they love, back in the day the movies were, An Inconvenient Truth, so provocative. Hotel Rwanda, gut-wrenching. Schindler's List, I cried the whole time through. So we take 5 stars, 5 times 5 stars, and we're suggesting things like that. And what were they really watching back then? Billy Madison, White Chicks, and of course the cinematic classic Paul Blart, Mall Cop. And no one's forgotten that movie. And so, challenge that orthodoxy. I said, wait, let's do a huge A/B test where we don't let people rate, and we do, and we predict also, we use our best prediction to say what you're going to give it, and then another one where we don't really care. And you know what? The results in that test were flat as the plains of Kansas. No green, no red, nothing. Boy, what a waste of a couple of years, Gib. What do you think? So for step one, iconoclast yourself. And that's smash an idol so you know how it feels. You know the feel of the baseball bat handle. Okay, step number 2, we'll talk about, wow, they're all gone. Okay, step number 2 is hand over baseball bats. Start it rolling, but stop mid-smashing of idol. Smash a little bit of it and then hand them out. So here's an example. An example is several years, flash forward a few years. And back in the day, before we had all those auto-playing trailers and all the video richness of the current user interface on Netflix, we had a bunch of box shots that were vertical and going across, and that image was so important. And we were licensing from the Cartoon Network all of their Adult Swim. That was like, if you don't know Adult Swim, they're all their late night, edgy, bizarro animation they're showing at 2 a.m. And so we were licensing all that content, that whole Adult Swim catalog, and the studios back then would give us the art. And the art they gave us looked exactly like that. You can't even see the box outline because it's black on black. But they were vertical rectangles with white lettering, the same font that said Adult Swim in the title. I was like, who the hell is going to click play on that? We're not getting our value. And it drove me nuts. So I went to our content executive in LA and I said, Elizabeth, I really want to talk to Turner that owns Adult Swim / the Cartoon Network and tell him, please give us better box art. We know we can get value out of these titles because I have no idea what the Venture Brothers are, and unless you're a cult fan, you're not going to know what the heck that is. So basically, I explained A/B testing to, I think, every single person who worked for the Cartoon Network / Turner. And it was like, slowly. Let's make it like a first grade book. And I made it rhyme, and I only used one syllable words. And eventually, they understood A/B testing, and they agreed to let us do a large-scale A/B test where they would supply box art that would be different. So 500,000 people or so would get this monstrosity. 500,000 would get art that they designed, and 500,000 art we designed. Not shocking. The bar was super low. But you put in an image and you raise the, in this case, raised it by about 50% are the numbers. You get more viewing when you know what the heck's going on. And they were convinced it's our brand. People love the black, and we want that brand solidarity. And you know what? People don't give a damn about brand until they have a great product to use, and the brand should be built out of the product. You shouldn't have the brand police wandering around and telling you, this is the way you need to build your product. Let's make it work for the consumer first. So this unlocked what it was about, and their version kept at least the same title treatment font, and we changed the font, and that drove it by another 10%. And that worked on other titles. I have one more, Robot Chicken, same thing. Put in an image, it's gonna drive up the click rate hugely. Put in a better title treatment that's gonna grab then, drives them up even more. So what did I do with this? I started it rolling with my bat in hand, smashing that orthodoxy of must respect the studio, this is the way they want it, and going like, screw that, we're paying a lot of money for this, we need those titles to sing to the consumer so they'll hit play. Step 2 would have been, wow, that's a big win. Why don't we run with that a big way? So I could have done it myself, but you want to leverage yourself as a leader. So what I did is, you take a baseball bat, and you take one, and you take one, and you take one, and now we can ride this big. Because why use one image that an agency says is the perfect image for a title, and that's what our best designer, put on it, and is gonna love it? Why not just try 10? So I didn't do all this. My team went crazy, and when I say my team, across not only product leaders, but also designers and engineers, they went wild with now we try dozens of different images that are personalized. Now we're doing different videos that are personalized, and we try a whole thing. They took this one small thing, and they ran with it, not me. So thus I'm leveraged. So step 2, leverage the team to hand out the bats and let them innovate. And I wasn't second guessing. I go, here's the kernel of a bigger idea, run with it. And I was just another person offering my opinions, not top down, but hey, how about try this? And other people were too. And I don't deserve any special credit. We were all pitching it. Okay, so one little aside, which metrics aren't always clear. So it is great when you can let people challenge you, let them try their own ideas and go, why don't you just A/B test it? If it works, we'll know. We'll see the metrics were driven up, and if it doesn't, it'll go down and won't work, and that's an easy way to do it. But many of you are in a smaller company, or the products you build aren't as easily you can't as easily test them. And so now I inherit in my new phase of my Netflix career, I still have the consumer side, but now I also have the internal studio tech side, much more nascent at Netflix. And so we have this huge thing we're trying to do. We are trying to revolutionize the way people make movies and TV shows, leveraging technology and apps all the way across that ecosystem, from pitch to play, and everywhere in between. And this is going to be a lot harder to measure. And these are a lot of, it's revolutionary. It's going to be a huge advantage for Netflix as we're producing. The amount of content we're producing at a global scale is now somewhat unprecedented, and it's going to get entirely unprecedented within the next year or two. So you can't always measure it as easily. We'll do the best we can. So you have to be flexible. You have to empower people. And you're going to have to let them have a chance to take parts of this and not play the role of Edison or Jobs in your pursuit of a better product. The next step is not just handing out the baseball bats after you arrive at something, but letting your team start challenging the orthodoxy themselves. So, example, I used to work for someone named Neil Hunt, who for many, many years was the chief product officer at Netflix. And Neil said to the whole world in an interview, he said, we are never going to do downloads. That's a waste of time. The internet's going to be ubiquitous, and it's a lot of effort to do that, so it's not worth it. And then someone on my team comes up to me, and he says, this guy named Zach, he was an individual contributor, and he goes, I don't believe that. I think the pulse of the consumer is downloads are important, especially in emerging markets where we want to grow, like Brazil, like India, like Malaysia, countries that are very ripe, but they don't have, their internet isn't good, and they use that. And so he had a bat in his hand, and he challenged it. It wasn't like, oh my God, Neil Hunt said this I must obey. It's like you build up the culture so people are used to saying, I don't agree with that. And I said, good. I was like more ambivalent. I wasn't passionate about trying downloading, but I was open to it. Thought it was a reasonably good idea. I said, research it more, build up the case. And we ended up, this fall of 2015, Neil said this, by fall of 2016, we launched it around the world. And so imagine all the research and development time. So it wasn't long before we said, nah, we're going to try anyway. This is the never say never philosophy. So you have to enable others to be the disruptors. Wow, it's like entirely different. Okay, then the next thing, it keeps it so much more exciting for me. I don't know about for you. So the next thing you have to think about is the hardest part. And this is where you got to go Zen. This is where you got to go old-time Buddhist and get rid of that ego, because this is hard. This is like, let them take those bats to you and your ideas. Now I get to be, Todd Yellin is playing the role of Neil Hunt in the latest installation or installment of our show. And so now I encourage and have. And many, many times I am wrong. And those are the best moments for the Netflix culture. Because when it's someone on the team goes, Todd, I don't agree with what you say. I think we should try this. And I go, I debate them. But I don't go top down and go, no, there's no way. And I leave that veto sitting in my pocket almost always. And I go, we debate, we go after it, we bring it out to the team. And then many things we try. And like I said, I like when I'm proven wrong, because that shows we're building up stronger muscles in the organization, and then people see it. There was a talk a couple ago where she was mentioning, sorry, I forgot her name, but it was a good talk, and she was saying, yes, you have to create that culture. You have to build it up within the organization. So here's an example. So Melinda, product manager, she comes in, she was new. She worked from Amazon. She was good, really good product manager, was super excited and crazy energy, putting me to shame. She comes in, bursts in, talking to her, and she goes, great idea. India, we really want to grow there. It's so important to the business. But they can't afford, we could skim off the top, but we're going to need a cheaper plan. We need a mobile-only plan. So what she did is she did an Amazon trick. And I don't care about whatever process you want to use. I really don't care. We're flexible. And so she used the Amazon trick of she wrote a faux press release. That's a fun trick in their bag of tricks. Fun, I don't care, it's cool. And so she wrote a faux press release about Netflix launches, a fourth mobile-only plan for half the price in India. And I was skeptical. I said, look, it's going to drive down ASP so much that even if we get more members, they're going to be paying so much less money, it will never compensate, and this will be a money pit for us. And I said, go ahead, if you want to learn, you could try. Go ahead. So basically, she carried it through. She thought about it. I want them to be thoughtful about it. I don't want resources wasted on ideas. So it's open to debate, not just my debate, others debated it. And you know where this is going. If you pay attention in any Netflix news, we launched a mobile-only plan in India just a couple of months ago. And like I said, I could sit here all day and keep you from your cocktails and food or whatever the heck's out there and just talk about all the times they proved me wrong. Because honestly, it's hard for the ego. Calm down, Todd. It's all good in the big picture. But it's good for the company. So, a few sum-up points. Set the table for that dissent. Encourage it. Don't discourage it. Hold back. Debate. It's good. You don't have to keep your mouth shut. You have things to offer as a leader. You've been around the block. They know that you're thoughtful about it, but don't prohibit. Don't make it like a veiled message, like you're an idiot to try it and it's going to be career limiting. Encourage them to try things. Empower them to make decisions. Don't keep it all on yourself. Don't micromanage. Say, you're the informed captain for this. You own it, and make sure everyone else knows. Do not overgive things to the loudest people in the room. Happens all the time. It's based on loudness. It's based on hierarchy. It's rewarding the wrong things in a company. You want to reward the right things in a company. And being the loudest in the room, yep, some of us are just naturally that way. Whapped in the butt, and then we came out really loud and wah, wah, and it didn't stop from then. And some of us are really thoughtful and quiet and have great ideas, and you don't want to deprive yourself and the company of those people's great ideas. Avoid Jeopardy-style meetings. What does that mean? It means back in the day at Netflix, it was all, and one of the things you hear about these big Jeopardy champions is not only do they master trivia, but the really good ones mastered how to use that buzzer. And so you're really good on the buzzer, and that's important. And a Jeopardy-style meeting is when we've all been in these meetings, where you can anticipate in a preternatural way when the last syllable of the person who's just speaking is about to come out, and you jump on the last syllable, on the buzzer, bam, you getting your word. And some people are masters on that buzzer, and some people aren't. So once again, you're losing valuable ideas when you do that. So you want to allow for that diverse set of voices, and different people have different styles. Some people are fast thinkers, some people are slower thinkers, some people are quieter, some people are outgoing, some people are overly loud, some people are overly quiet. You know what? Different people, but different ideas. Some of them have great ideas, some of them have stupid ideas, and I have a strong feeling they're spread pretty evenly among all those types. So, first thing, allow for people to what we put into our Netflix meetings, many of them, and I certainly do in product, is they become, let's go back a slide, hand-raising meetings. I don't want the people to just jump, and I can't take it anymore. At this point in my life, it's a cacophony. Let's have a little order in these meetings. Raise your hand. Okay, and then you go, and then you go. Who haven't we heard from yet? Okay, here and here. No, it doesn't feel like we're infantilizing them like we're back in school. It feels like we're creating a little order and getting more voices in the meeting. But some people, even with that, are more reluctant. They're not as reluctant. They're more still reluctant to raise their hands because they don't like to speak in front of 10, 20, or 40 people. So you also want to adopt. You encourage them. You give them positive, constructive feedback about love if you do that. You try to reward that behavior. And I've seen many people grow and become more outspoken, and that's fantastic. And those are proud product managers. We've grown into leaders at Netflix. But if they still can't, that's fine. That's why we've become a Google Docs culture. Everything is written up in memos before the meetings. It's not PowerPoints where you're sitting and someone's just talking at you. You read, you pre-read, you comment all over the right margin of the doc, and everyone can get their voice in. And then the conversation we have, the meetings are much more productive and aren't wasting time, and everyone is optional to most of my meetings. If the meeting is good enough, they'll show up, and if it's not, they won't. But no FaceTime, none of that. It's got to be worth people's time, and the documents tend to be wide open to everyone who wants to comment. Farm for dissent. You have to encourage them to pick up that bat. You have to keep on bringing it up. You can't just leave it. If you leave it idle for a while, people won't. They'll be reluctant. Should I say it? Should I not say it? You'll go, okay, any other things? I learned something. We just hired this guy named Peter Reiling from the Aspen Institute. Brilliant guy. And he's like kind of a VP of education at Netflix. And he brings in great speakers. And he taught me one trick as a moderator. He goes, use the 45-second rule, which will be the most uncomfortable 45 seconds in your life. And the 45-second rule works like this. Anyone want to challenge this idea? Or you can say just any questions. And you don't wait 3 seconds. We're all so impatient. We're like, oh, okay, that's enough. And that 3 seconds feels like it's an eternity. Push it. Count 45 seconds in your head. And I've done it. I've done it in front of a whole theater at Netflix. Anyone? They're only giving me 5 minutes and 48 seconds, so I'm not going to show you what that's like. So push it. Use your 45 seconds. Farm for dissent. So yes, I mentioned testing helps with clear metrics when you can test. And sometimes you can't, and that's okay. You're going to have to work harder to figure out how to empower more people and to create clear indicators of the bets they're making and how they go. Let's pause on this slide, because this is the most important thing. I use this slide internally over and over again. I've used this externally before, but that's the most important image. Let's soak it in, because that's the image that says, if you're not in that position in your career, I tell this to everyone, including myself, if you're not in that position periodically, then you're not doing your job. You should sometimes lean so far forward that you fall on your face. And that's okay also. And you encourage that. And you go like, yay, now let's help. We're all going to dust you off. And what did we learn from this? And then you move forward. Super important. And once again, these aren't things that you just say once and you forget about and it gets buried in a culture. These are things you have to remind everyone of persistently. Culture is aspirational. So you aim for a high culture. We try to do, the things I talked about today of creating the microculture within Netflix around product. I push these things, and then the greater Netflix culture, you push, you don't take for granted, and you keep on getting better and better, but it's a high bar, and it evolves the culture. It's not the same as it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. It's an ever-changing thing. So how do you know when you've created a culture of iconoclasts? And if anyone, I remember I was at that wonderful dinner last night, talked to some super bright people at my table, and several of them, like me, has been blessed with the existence in their house of teenage kids. And having teenagers in the house, well, there's a karma about having teenagers in the house, let's put it that way. At least for me, I must have been the biggest pain in the ass as a teenager. Everything I was challenging, everything I was questioning. My God, my parents, I don't know what they had to put up with until now. Because now I have two of my own, a 13-year-old and a 15-year-old. And they challenge everything. And you know what? I could look at it and gone like, what the hell's wrong with these kids and where did they come from and what did I ever do in this universe to deserve this? Or I could look at it like, this is healthy, they're gonna be fine, they are gonna be armed in this world to question things, and as long as they do it in a kind way, except to me and my wife, but everyone else, as long as they do it in a kind way and a thoughtful way and an empathetic way, it's okay. So last slide, which is, anyone recognize that movie underneath? It's an obscure one, early 50s, that's Marlon Brando. Wild One. Wild One, thank you. And what's the most famous line in the Wild One? It's Brando's response when they go, Johnny, what are you rebelling against? And Brando says, what do you got? That not only sums up my kids, that sums up my product team. And they can be exhausting, and I love all of it for it, at home, at work, because this is what's going to make my kids successful in the world, and this is what makes the product team at Netflix successful. And now, do I have any time for questions? I do, yay, wow, I paced that okay. Any questions?
I was wondering, how does your product team challenge you when they can't test it? What's the alternative? How do you do that?
So, being new to this studio space, and by the way, I'm going to make a shameless plug now. I am hiring VPs and directors and some amazing juicy roles in this nascent world. It's harder because, and this is what I'm trying to figure out, because sometimes when you can't come with clearer metrics of challenge me, give me the logic about how you're going to move that metric and how it's going to work, and not just me, give it to everyone when we have our strategy meeting, that open meeting I was talking about, which is optional for everyone. That's one thing. But now they have to walk in and go, hey, this is really going to super improve the workflow for animators in our studio. And it's like, God, there's hundreds of those. There aren't hundreds of thousands or tens of millions. So we can't do some A/B test. So now we have to use judgment. So now we have to figure out other ways. And then you have to use weaker metrics, obviously, and I know some of you do this, and now I'm doing this on the other side of our Netflix business. You have to use survey and more subjective metrics. You have to use things like, you have to ask yourself, is it worth instrumenting their workflow to check for things like cost and velocity and accuracy? And these are open questions. So you're asking a wonderful question that I personally am learning. Another question.
I was wondering if you could elaborate more on keeping it kind and coming from a place of empathy while also creating debate.
Yeah, and that comes to what I was talking about when a culture evolves. So Netflix, if you look at our values, online from years ago, we used to put out something called the Culture Deck. Now we put out the Culture Memo that's open to the public. And there was nothing written about inclusion in our old memo. And then you evolve your thinking, and society evolves and gets better, and then you realize you need to have a culture of inclusion. So we were doing things like I mentioned, stuff like Google Docs, raising your hands, making your, whatever feedback you're giving, making sure you're doing it in a human way, in a constructive way, and so forth, and watching that. But it's being sensitive to others who don't have your style, I think, is the most important thing, and aware of it. More I'm happy to talk about, but I'm not going to hold you up anymore. So thank you very much.